Hey, this is Mary Beth with Wasatch Community Gardens, here to talk to you today about planting onions. The first thing that you'll realize when you go to purchase onions to plant in your garden is that you might see some different types of onions available. So you might see what we call onion sets, which are these little dried bulbs. And these tend to just be available in a very limited number of varieties. So you might find white, yellow, or red, but not any choices of different kinds of white or different choices of yellows. So your choices are maybe a little bit more limited with these, but they're very easy, and we'll show you how to plant those in a minute. Another option you may come across is a little bundle of these dormant plants that are, each one of these is a little separate onion plant, and we will show you how to prepare these in just a second so you understand what to do with these. And then the third option is little baby plants that have just been sown, probably in January or February of this year, and they're going to need to be separated and planted individually, not as one giant clump like this, so they all have the space they need to size up. So we're going to talk about these starts first, because these are very commonly available. The first thing that you're going to want to do is spread them all out when you get them. You don't want them to start rotting. If they're moist and they're all clumped together like this, you might start to see mold and rot forming on the inside. So you want to let them breathe and separate them out. And then you want to separate them into different sizes. So you see here that there are some really just little tiny baby skinny ones. These are less likely to form a nice big onion bulb for you, but instead they're great for little green onions that you can just chop up and throw in a meatloaf or an omelet or scrambled eggs or something like that. So you're going to pull all the tiny ones out and make your pile of little tiny ones. Then you're going to pull out the ones that are bigger around than the size of a pencil. So the really big chunky ones, you're going to pull those out because those might not make the perfect size onion as well. So here you've got your really big ones. Here's another really big one. So now you sort of have a little bit more sorting to do. Maybe take a few more of these little guys out. Some more big guys, and what you're left with is a pretty uniform size of onion plant. This size, which is about the size of a pencil that you would write with, these are all going to make beautiful size onion bulbs. The big ones we're going to show you how to plant very closely together, and you're just going to let them grow until they're perfect little green onions for you, rather than waiting for these to form a big bulb that they might never do. The same with these little guys. So the very smallest ones, this has a long way to go to make an onion this big. So we're gonna just expect from this that it makes a nice little green onion for us. This will be the first harvest of green onions, and this is like a succession sowing in a way. These will become green onions after these do. And meanwhile, these guys will be in the garden turning into really nice sized onions for your harvest. So next we're going to go to our planting area and show you how to plant all three kinds. Okay, here we are in the planting bed, and we're going to do a little bit of preparation and then demonstrate how to plant your onions. The first thing we're going to start with is the onion sets that we talked about earlier. And you're going to want to go through these and sort of sort out the ones that might not be in perfect shape for planting. So you can see some of these are sort of wrinkled. This one has a little bit of mold. These just are shriveled little messes. So I would actually just discard those and not even bother planting them. There's still a lot of onions in here. So here's another bad one. But all the ones that look really good, you can go ahead and grab all of these, however many you think you want to plant. And then I would actually pre-soak these in some compost extract. This is a bucket of water, and I brought some compost from home. And all I'm going to do is take a handful of the compost and dump it in the water and just stir it around and start letting it go into solution. It's also possible to take your compost and like wrap it in a bandana and then just sort of dunk your bandana and let it go into solution that way. But I figure this is just as easy. And then you're just gonna plop them in there, just toss them in the pot and let them soak. And this can facilitate them sort of waking up from this dormant state and getting ready to go into the ground. So those can be soaking while we're planting our other onions. So over here, we've already separated our really, really big starts from our teeny weeny little ones from the ones that we think are ideal. So for green onions, our first crop will come from these really big ones. And if you want to dunk the roots in your compost extract, that is certainly not going to hurt anything. Then you're going to plant these really closely together. And this is not complicated. Onions are very forgiving. And you're just going to stick these guys in the ground pretty closely together. You don't want to put them too deep because they can develop a condition called neck rot. So this is a fine distance to put these apart. And then we can move on to our little babies and plant these very closely together as well. You can even stick in a couple at a time and then just kind of backfill. Make sure that they're seated in there, but not too deep. And that's really all there is for planting your green onions. You can see how closely together they're planted. But the main crop of onions, the ones that are going to turn into your, maybe not this big, but nice big bulbs, you want to place down the row far enough apart that they have room to size up. So for example, there are some varieties like Elsa Craig that does get this big. So that means they need to be this far apart in the row so they have the elbow room between each other to size up in the row. If you're planting, say, long of Florence onions that are very long, sort of a torpedo shape, those can be planted much more closely together in the row because they're not going to get as big. But these are Walla Wallas, and the typical spacing for Walla Wallas is about 6 to 8 inches. And you just come through and stick them in the row. Make sure they're well seated so that they're not going to blow over in the wind and that they're able to get some nice roots forming. And then you'll just simply water them in. And that's about all there is to planting onions from these starts that are available at a lot of the nurseries. Okay, we're ready now to plant our little sets that have been soaking for about 15 minutes in this compost extract. So we're just going to grab them out. And the important thing again is to remember your spacing. Now we don't have a specific variety for these, so I'm going to put them about 5 to 6 inches apart in the row. Starting right here. And the first thing that I will do is actually lay them out. You want the pointy end up and what's called the basal plate down. This is where the roots will come out. And you can see how that works. This is just a little bit further ahead in terms of bulb formation than this. But this is the basal plate out of which come the roots. And that goes down. So what I like to do is space them out first, because you don't know how many you'll have or if you'll run out of room or bump up against the end of your bed. So this allows you, if you want to increase or decrease the spacing, it allows you to play with that before they're already under the soil and you forget where they are. And then all you're going to do is put them about 1 inch deep into the soil. So you're just going to take your fingers and push them down into the soil. Now, of course, these beds have already been prepared and they've been fertilized. Onions are heavy feeders. So you're just going to put them about 1 inch down, not too deep, and then cover them up, water them in. And of course, if you have a plant marker where you can identify what the variety was and maybe how many you put in there or where you stopped planting. That would be super helpful as well. And then these are ready to go. So now we've got green onions, little, even smaller little green onions that we will be harvesting after the first batch. Our big mature Walla Wallas that are from starts. And then our unknown variety of white onions planted from sets that have been pre-soaked. And then the last thing we're going to do is show you what to do if you buy these. These are also Walla Wallas, but these were just started from seed probably in January or early February. And you can see there's a lot going on here. There might be, I don't know, 100 onion plants in here. This is a lot of onions. And it did come with a plant tag, which is nice. So I'll stick that in there and pull out my weeds. I'll get my row kind of prepped so that the soil's nice and loose and ready to go. And then it's time to start separating these. You want to be kind of gentle. These are falling apart really beautifully. Sometimes they're a little bit trickier to pull apart. But these roots, you want to make sure, I'm going to use my compost extract, and keep these nice and moist. You don't want, for example, if you're doing this on a sunny day, you don't want to just leave them laying like this out in the sun and let those roots get dry. So keep your roots nice and moist, and then try to sit here and do some surgery on your onions and just start pulling them apart very gently, like teasing them apart. You can see here some itty bitty ones. Those might make nice green onions. But these will grow into full-size onions. And you want to just space them down the row, just like we did before. I'm going to take out these two little guys. Make sure these roots are nice and moist. I'm going to dip them in my water so they stay nice and moist. Get these out of the way. And then you're just going to put these guys in the ground and get them seeded. They might look a little bit wobbly at first, but that's okay. They'll get the hang of it because they want to become onions. That's their goal. That's a little bit of a root right there. So again, making sure your spacing is correct and that the roots aren't all twisted around and that they're at the right depth. I mean, that this is a pretty simple thing, really, to get them planted and happy. And now you've got your little baby Walla Wallas in the ground. You're going to gently water them in. And remember, they will need to continue to be watered on these hot days that we have coming up. Or let's hope we have some hot days coming up. And that's really all it takes. In a couple of days, or certainly within a week, they're going to be standing upright in the row and starting to grow and size up and be really happy, just like our starts are down there. The last tip is about fertilizing your onions. Of course, we've already pre-fertilized this bed with blood meal, which is an important source of nitrogen. And with your onions being such heavy feeders, they're going to really need that application of blood meal. But then in about early June, definitely by the second or third week of June, consider providing a little bit of additional fertilizer in the form of blood meal just by sprinkling it on the surface in between your onion rows and then cultivating it in lightly and watering that in just to give them another little boost since they are such heavy feeders. We want to avoid, however, adding any additional fertilizer after about the 4th of July because that will actually negatively affect the storage potential of your onions. So happy onion growing!